So was there a request for proposal?
I do not know, Congressman.
Okay, thank you for that. So why Bank of Saipan? Obvious earlier you had answered that question.
Well, that was my perspective on why I would have
Right.
chosen Bank of Saipan, but
Okay, so
but I
let
could.
me ask you a question. Why not Bank of Guam?
I don't know the answer to that. I would suspect that the best person to answer that would be the Secretary of Finance. Just for the record, okay, I think the Bank of Guam will be just as good. As a matter of fact, that was an early discussion. If it was a low to no interest bearing loan,
Mhm.
that there will be a consortium of banks. At least that was discussed among ourselves. And I just want to state for the record, there is no attempt to discriminate or otherwise remove other participants. But
Okay.
I am not in the best person to answer as to how they got the contract and why.
Okay.
Was there any written process for reviewing the boost applications?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
You responded to Representative McGoffney that there is a written process for reviewing boost applications. Where is that written process
Sure. So
available?
thank you. So, to the best of my knowledge, there, in one or more occasions in Mr. Arroyo's record, it accurately reflects, to my understanding, the process by which we are guided in terms of I believe I walked it through earlier, receipt, preparation of a ledger for review, conducting a due diligence to ensure compliance with having met each of the specific criterion or submissions, and then open deliberation, and then an advancement of a list. That is what I understand. And then it goes up to the governor and back down to the bank to promulgate or to process. That's my understanding. And forgive me, I don't have it readily available, but I'm gonna assume I know it's here. I've
Yeah,
seen it.
I've seen what you're referring to as
Yes,
well in the correspondence
Yes,
that
ma'am.
was submitted. So that's what you were referring to. That's the written process for reviewing boost applications is in the back and forth emails.
No, I think the short answer is yes, it is contained in the back and forth emails, but we could take a short recess and I could look for the explicit articulation of what's required of the panel.
I guess what I'm also asking is that written process published anywhere where members of the community could also see how applications are being reviewed?
Now that's a good question. I don't know. I don't know if it's been put on a poster, ma'am, but I know it's been, or I mean,
the
public or
website?
put out there in the open.
Mhm.
But I do know it's readily available to members of the panel. Yes, ma'am.
I'm just asking, has that ever come up? And is there something that is written on that?
Thank you and forgive me.
Thank you.
I was attempting to respond to the first question. To the last question, I don't have enough information to say yes or no.
Okay, so has there ever been during the hundreds, if not thousands, of applications that you and your fellow panelists have reviewed that no conflicts of interest have ever come up? I'm just wondering.
That's a different question.
It's a question that I'm asking right now.
Could you restate the question for the record
Let
and
me
give me
restate
the
the question
opportunity
for
to
you.
respond?
Okay, how would you like me to put this?
The same way you did last time,
I
Congressman.
will do that for you.
Thank you.
Okay, so in the thousands of applications that you and your fellow panelists have reviewed, have conflicts of interest ever arose? Have there ever been conflicts of interest where a panelist is conflicted out because of a familial relationship or perhaps a working relationship? Has there ever been any conflicts of interest with all of the applications that you guys have reviewed?
If it would benefit the body, let me answer this simply, and I hope it applies universally. Yes, there have been one or more occasions where a member of the panel has decided to recuse himself because of a perceived conflict of interest for whatever reason. I don't know if it's familial or otherwise, but yes.
All right, thank you. And when that does happen and that person or the panelist steps out, do you get another panelist to come in, or does it just is the decision made with just the remaining panelists, such as yourself, Secretary of Finance, and either Secretary Ed Guerrero or his filler in Jesus Taisagli?
Based on my experience, we would proceed with the membership as is.
Okay, so no one is added. So there's no one else that basically, so it's just, as you mentioned earlier, just you that, and these members that we mentioned earlier who make these final decisions. That's what's been stated. So I thank you for that.
Just following up on the conflict of interest questions, is there a written conflict of interest policy anywhere that you could point to that governed this program and the decision-making process?
Thank you for the question. Not that I'm aware of.
And could you also help us understand, in the event that a panelist had to recuse themselves, why wouldn't somebody else who was representing that office then step in to assist in the decision making or in the review process?
Great question, ma'am. I don't believe I have an adequate answer for that. You're saying like if I conflicted myself out, why
Mhm.
wouldn't my substitute be?
Right.
I don't know the answer to that. I mean, the appointing authority can always replace me, perhaps if it was in my situation. But based on how it's been operating, we find that 2 or more members has been sufficient to conduct some type of due diligence in reviewing and discussing the application.
Okay. And in your case, your appointing authority was the governor.
Is the governor? Yes.
Okay. And then in the case of Secretary of Commerce, he was the only member of the panel that had, I guess, a substitute, as you put it, with Mr. Taisigui. Nobody else had a substitute.
I can't speak for the Secretary of Finance, but I don't have a substitute. But I don't. Yes, the short answer to that, ma'am, is yes.
Thank you. I yield.
Did you ever take time or with the panel to review the final rules that were provided by the federal government with respect to this fund?
I'll answer that in a second. I just want to state for the record, since it's still up on the screen here, that I do not have a relationship with Ms. Karen Kent, filial, professional, social, or otherwise, other than seeing her at the bank and having her ask me to inquire. Just want to make that clear. As a matter of fact, I stated earlier for the record, I didn't know who she was until I actually started participating in the BOOST program, just for the record. Did I take the time to review the final rule?
All 400 pages of it.
No, ma'am. I did not read all 400 pages of the final rule.
Thank you, Zaji, for providing that earlier. With respect to that, I think there are some concerns that could be had in the process that was described to us.
Sure.
If you had reviewed the final rule, you would see that the granting agency, which would be considered the CNMI government, should have zero, what's the word? Participation in the decision-making matters of this. And so with that, I ask, having the governor be the final authority on every application, would you say that is going with the regulations or against the regulations? Final rule.
Based on my opinion, and I'm not a lawyer, I believe that the panel serves strictly as an advisory capacity to the governor. There are no decisions made by the panel. The governor is the ultimate authority. I would also defer to council, whether it's the governors or the individual agencies, to best answer that. I have been operating in good faith, and if there were any contradictions in terms of how we operate, the assumption is that we would be guided accordingly by legal counsel, whether from the bank or from the government itself. So I'm not aware, and I'm still have not been made aware of any conflicts of an existing federal regulation, law, rule, or otherwise.
Noted. I've had several community members who have applied for the Farmers, Fishermen, and Ranchers program, and they really are curious if they will be told if they're not approved or approved. Is there a place they can check if they are not approved?
Yes, ma'am. Any member of the community may contact the Bank of Saipan within their normal operating hours to inquire as to the status of their applications. To the best of my knowledge, no application, whether it's for fisher, farmer, rancher, small business nonprofit has been rejected. I would strongly encourage any member who's curious whether an applicant or not to contact the Bank of Saipan. And
Order.
Sorry, Mr. Zalji, please refrain from disrupting the hearing.
so for the record, again, the administrator of the BOOST program is the Bank of Saipan. They would be the authority in terms of the status of one's application.
Thank you. I yield for now.